My name is Steve Day. Like many of you, my fellow residents and I face potential bills running into the tens of thousands of pounds to remove dangerous cladding and unknown costs to fix other fire safety defects. Our service charge has doubled over the last 3 years to pay for interim fire safety measures. We despair because we weren't responsible for the problems and simply can't pay. We managed to expose our developers' non-compliance with building regulations in force at the time of construction. That effort brought us a £1.3 million payout, but that is only a fraction of the expected cost. With such overwhelming evidence, we were confident that we could get the developer to pay for all the defects. However, as many of you have also discovered, limitation periods protect developers from having to pay to fix their shoddy workmanship. Therefore, over the past 6 months, we have been working to ensure that those responsible for building safety defects are made to pay. The principle of Polluter Pays is already enshrined in existing environmental protection legislation. Those responsible for pollution must pay to clean it up. We want the same principle to be applied to those responsible for constructing buildings that failed to meet building regulations in force at the time of construction. They must be made to fix them. If they don't pay, tens of thousands of leaseholders will be ruined. It has been estimated that it will cost around £15 billion to fix all fire safety defects in high-rise blocks over 18 metres, but the government has currently allocated only £5.1 billion to the Building Safety Fund. For those under 18 metres, the government is requiring leaseholders to borrow money to fix their cladding. These schemes only cover unsafe cladding. No provision has been made for non-cladding costs or the ongoing fire safety measures that keep many of us awake at night. And yes, I can't sleep either. We don't know how much it will cost to fix all fire safety defects, but £5.1 billion is nowhere near enough. To add insult to injury, developers seem to have managed to persuade the government to cap their liability at just £2 billion under the proposed developer tax. To put this into perspective, over the last 10 years, the top 10 developers have achieved over £31 billion in operating profits and distributed almost £12 billion to their shareholders. The solution is to make all those responsible for the crisis pay for their failures. Not just developers, but all responsible parties, contractors, architects, building inspectors and material suppliers. Instead of allowing developers to cap their liability, we are campaigning to ensure that where a building is found not to have complied with building regulations in force at the time of construction, those responsible for that failure pay, not leaseholders. Our proposal is based on the existing procedures for dealing with the costs of cleaning up contaminated land. Under environmental protection legislation, local authorities or the Environment Agency identify, where possible, those responsible for polluting land and make them pay for cleaning it up. The law already exists. It works. It saves homeowners from the multi-million-pound cost of dealing with the consequences of contaminated land on which their homes were built. Liability rightly fell to the company that had caused the original pollution and the developer that failed to properly remediate the site. This flowchart shows how Polluter Pays would work in the defective building context. 1. Where a landlord is seeking to spend significant sums of money on fire safety measures, they will need to consider whether the need for the expenditure is likely to have been caused by a failure to comply with building regulations in force at the time of construction. If it is, they will be required to seek a determination on compliance from the local authority. 2. The local authority will examine expert reports and may visit the site before coming to its decision. If the building is found not to have been built correctly, the local authority will decide who is responsible and how much they will have to pay. In most cases, responsibility is likely to lie with the developer or major contractor. 3. The responsible parties will be made to pay in full for the costs of remediation and related costs such as interim fire safety measures or waking watch and insurance costs. So, That is the process. But what about those buildings not caught by the above? By widening the pool of responsible parties, the more public funding that can be allocated to leaseholders facing bills caused by post-construction changes to building regulations. Making the polluter pay also removes any incentive for developers and others to cut corners, making future crises less likely. Our preference is for the government to accept the polluter pays principle and legislate to ensure developers and others pay for non-compliant buildings. This could be done through amendments to the Building Safety Bill or as a standalone bill. But we also urge all cladding groups and supporters watching this to back the polluter pays principle. We will need to grow support for this across the country and make sure this proposal makes it onto the statute books. Please help us, and thank you for watching.